Boston's North End is a beautiful and lively neighborhood that is home to Boston's Italian community and is steeped in the history of the American Revolution. If you are coming to Boston, a visit to the North End is a must. In this video, we'll take you for a day in the North End and show you our top things to see and our favorite eats from the local Italian community. Since there is so much to do and see in the North End, first let's get some caffeine. When you're here, you should stop by Caffe Vittoria, Boston's first Italian cafe that opened in the 1920s. Caffe Vittoria serves some of the best coffee in town and also has a variety of Italian pastries and desserts. As soon as you enter, you get a completely authentic atmosphere that takes you back in time. Vintage decor including retro coffee machines, diner-style tables and chairs, walls splashed with art and photographs from the past. They have lots of Italian treats that you can enjoy in the cafe, which has plenty of seating. For a coffee, we ordered the cappuccino, which was fantastic, with a thick layer of foam. The cocoa powder on top elevated the drink a lot, with a subtle chocolatey flavor lightly sweetened with the frothiness of the milk. For a treat, we ordered the sfogliatella, a flaky pastry filled with baked custard. We really liked the crispiness of the pastry and that the custard was not overly sweet and included bits of candied citrus. 10 out of 10 would highly recommend this cafe. If you decide to come here, note that it's cash only, like many other food places in the North End. From here, let's head down Hanover Street and on over to our first landmark attraction, the Paul Revere Mall, which is a large, open, brick-lined, pedestrian-only corridor that links the Old North Church on one end with St. Stephen's Church on the other end. The mall features the famous equestrian statue of Paul Revere, whose midnight ride from Boston to Lexington, warning of the approaching British troops, would make him a legend. Looking east is the back of the horse and Paul Revere, with St. Stephen's Church in the background. This church is not currently open to the public. Looking west is Paul Revere and the horse facing me, with the Old North Church in the distance. It would be easy to quickly make your way through this mall to get to the next stop, but I would say it's worth slowing down and taking the time to read the plaques on the walls. There are 13 plaques commemorating various Boston residents and other important people in history, many of whom partook in various U.S. wars. The courtyard has lots of shade with seating built into the walls of the surrounding buildings, and sitting here is a great way to relax and absorb this historical place. From the Paul Revere Mall, you can head on over to the Old North Church, which is Boston's oldest surviving church building and most visited historical site. It is a major site of Boston's Freedom Trail, which is a 2.5-mile long path through Boston that passes by 16 locations significant to the history of the U.S. As you enter the courtyard, you will see a war memorial to soldiers fallen in Iraq and Afghanistan. The blank dog tags, which represent the number of fallen Americans, are hung on chains strung between the fence posts. As you walk past the courtyard, you will arrive at the location to buy a ticket to go inside of the church. The $5 admission includes a self-guided tour through the church with staff available to answer questions. Built in 1723, Old North Church is Boston's oldest surviving church building and an icon of the American Revolution. This church is famous for the events of 1775, when allies of Paul Revere secretly climbed the steeple and held high 2 lanterns to signal that the British forces were invading by sea. From here came the famous saying, 1 if by land and 2 if by sea. This momentous event ignited the American Revolution. As you look around inside the church, you'll notice the unusual seating. These are called box pews. Members of the church had to purchase seating, and box pew sales were an important source of revenue for the church. Pew owners were allowed to decorate their pews to suit their style and pocketbook. As you walk around the church, you can also take a look at some of the historical relics. The Old North Church area also includes the Clough House, one of Boston's oldest surviving brick residences from the year of 1715. Today it houses a printing office which offers free colonial printing demonstrations and a gift shop dedicated to New England artisans and small businesses. And here you can find some pretty unique items. Our next stop, which is a short walk up the street, is the Copp's Hill Burying Ground, which is the second oldest cemetery in the city and has a rich history dating back to the early 17th century. Copp's Hill is the resting place and burying ground of merchants, artisans, and craftspeople who lived in the North End. Some notables buried in Copp's Hill are Cotton and Increase Mather, two Puritan ministers closely associated with the Salem witch trials. The burying ground also holds Old North Church sexton Robert Newman, the man who hung the lanterns on the night of Paul Revere's midnight ride, and also Edmund Hart, the builder of the USS Constitution. Across from the burying grounds, you can find the Skinny House, which has the uncontested distinction of being the narrowest house in Boston. It last sold in 2021 for $1.25 million. On a clear day, you can see the USS Constitution and the Bunker Hill Memorial across the Boston Harbor. Because of its height and panoramic vistas, the British used this vantage point to train their cannons on Charlestown during the Battle of Bunker Hill. It's pretty incredible to walk through the cemetery and marvel at the history involved in its existence over the years. It's an eerily beautiful spot not to be missed when you visit the North End. All of this history will be sure to make you feel hungry. Let's head back to Hanover Street, a short walk away from the cemetery. On the way there, I would suggest walking on Salem Street, which runs parallel to Hanover Street and also has some authentic shops. There you will find Bovas Bakery, which is a local favorite family-owned Italian bakery. Bovas has been baking and serving homemade Italian cookies, pastries, and breads for over 80 years to the local community at the North End. They are open 24/7, and if you're there, you may see them hard at work preparing fresh Italian treats by hand around the clock. They have so many options that if you're inclined to get something, I'm sure it will be quite difficult to make a selection. Let's stop by to load up on some caffeine at an authentic Italian establishment called Polcaris Coffee. Polcaris is an old-school coffee shop that has stayed tried and true since the 1930s. Entering the shop, you feel like you are entering a time capsule that's transported you way back in time. The shop opened in 1932 by Mr. Polcari. That's him up there. When he passed away, he left the business to his faithful employee, Bobby, who now owns and operates the business. When you're here, you may see some of the locals coming in to greet him. There's almost 90 years of coffee aroma within these very walls. No wonder why it smells so good in here. If you want to taste what an authentic coffee shop from the 1930s looks and tastes like, then you've got to stop by here. We opted for a regular drip coffee to have on our way over to lunch, and it was really amazing coffee. For lunch, we recommend heading back to Hanover Street and getting a tasty sandwich from any one of the local Italian delis, also known as Salumerias. One of my favorite options is Bricco's, which is located down an easy-to-miss alley between two brick buildings that are off of the main street. The shop has a large selection of salami meats, sausages, and other deli meats. They also make their own sandwiches, and all the meats for the sandwiches are cut fresh from the deli. The shop also carries a large variety of dry and fresh pastas, other Italian branded jars of sauces, and condiments. We opted for the Panino Lady, which is a simple sandwich made of homemade mozzarella, tomatoes, basil, olive oil, and their signature fresh bread. Outside of the shop, there is a small seating area, so we took our sandwich there to enjoy. The bread aroma in this little alley is just so good, it really elevates the whole experience. The sandwich was bigger than my head. The portion size is huge, so you can also share with someone else to make sure you have enough room for other treats later on. The sandwich is a very simple sandwich, but the ingredients were so fresh. The bread was amazing with a crispy crust and not at all chewy, and it was light but with a hearty bread flavor. Perfect ratio of ingredients to bread. Something so simple came out incredible in taste. In the same complex, they also have a bakery. This bakery is very easy to miss as you have to go down the stairs. The second you walk in, you are hit with the amazing smell of freshly baked breads. This bakery serves bread to many of the local Italian restaurants, so it's no surprise that the bread here is so good. I would highly recommend stopping by Bricco's when you're in the North End. Another option we would recommend for lunch is Table Mercato. While it's not as old as some of the other options in the North End, Table Mercato is a new addition but delicious nonetheless. Inside is a cute little shop that sells, what else but Italian goodies. Table Mercato is actually the market version of the upscale restaurant called Table, which is right next door. Most of Table Mercato's stock comes directly from Italy, including the olive oils, pasta, pesto, spreads, and snacks. Everything here is homemade and made from scratch, so I find that the food quality here is quite good. You can enjoy a signature sandwich on their amazing homemade focaccia bread at any time of the day. We got the roasted eggplant sandwich and took it outside to sit down and eat. And actually, while we were eating our sandwich, 3 people stopped by to say that it looked so good and to ask us where we got it. The ingredients are so fresh, and I really like the salt and rosemary that is sprinkled on their super fresh focaccia. If you're looking for a quick lunch, Table Mercato is a solid option. Now that we are all fueled up, it's time to do some more sightseeing. Let's head on over to North Square, but on our way there, we will make a quick stop at St. Leonard's Church, which is right on Hanover Street. Inside the church, you will find a breathtakingly beautiful interior. You will also notice how peaceful it is after walking in straight from the hustle and bustle of the main road. It is a nice calm place to stop by after a busy day of touring and sightseeing. When you look around, you will notice all the intricate artwork on the ceiling and on the walls, created by immigrant craftsmen back in the 1800s. From here, let's make our way to North Square, which is situated in the heart of Boston's historical North End and contains within it some of Boston's most historical sites. Most notably is Paul Revere's house, which is the oldest building in downtown Boston. The house bears the name of the famous Paul Revere, who we met earlier. If you would like to take a look inside the house, it is open most days of the week, but be sure to check before you go. The 2-story house was purchased by Paul Revere in 1770, and he lived here for 30 years until he sold it. In the early 1900s, his great-grandson purchased the house to ensure its preservation. A modest entry fee will get you inside the house. Although it looks plain from the outside, there's a lot of rich history inside. Once you get in, you will see the courtyard where there are some of Paul Revere's works. Even though he was most famous for his midnight ride, he did in fact have a real job. He was a silversmith, and the courtyard displays some of his works. They do not allow photography or filming inside the house, so you'll have to come here for yourself to take a look. When you go inside, you will see the various living spaces of Paul Revere's residence. In each room, there are knowledgeable guides who describe the artifacts in the room and will answer any questions. After you are done looking inside the house, there's a visitor's center where you can learn some more about the history of Paul Revere and the American Revolution. You can also learn the answers to some important questions, such as what was the name of Paul Revere's horse. I would recommend stopping by here as we learned a lot about the history of the place. Another historical site in North Square is the Sacred Heart Church, which is across the street from Paul Revere's house. Let's go inside and take a look. This church has been serving the Italian community of the North End since the 1800s up until today. The chapel is made up of shrines and beautiful statues, many of which were crafted in Italy. Admissions to this church is free of charge, so make sure to stop by to take a look. Moving on to the final stop of the day, let's finally go and try some cannolis. When you're in Boston, getting a cannoli is something you should definitely have on your to-do list. The most famous place to get a cannoli is Mike's Pastry, which is a Boston staple. There is a heated debate on which shop has the best cannolis, Mike's or Modern's, so we will go and try both today. Mike's Pastry has a wide variety of cannoli flavors that you can choose from. If you are a more visual person, they also have pictures of the cannolis on the wall. Cannolis are very dense and rich, so if you're not a huge fan, or if you just want to have something else, they have a lot of other pastries like their famous Boston cream puffs and lobster tails. We opted for the plain cannoli, which is the classic flavor, and also the Florentine cannoli. There is no seating inside the shop and it can get very, very crowded. It will be emptiest in the morning, and in the afternoon there are usually long lines out the door. The line does move pretty fast, but you can generally expect to wait about 20 to 30 minutes. Next, we will stop by Modern Pastry, which is right across the street. The lines here are also very long, especially in the afternoon. There's a long-standing debate on whether Mike's or Modern's has the best cannoli. The consensus seems to be that the tourists prefer Mike's while the locals prefer Modern's. One of the biggest differences is that Modern does not fill their shells until they are ordered. This process prevents the shells from becoming too soft or soggy and keeps them perfectly flaky. Modern's cannolis are also much smaller compared to Mike's. We'll do a side-by-side comparison to show you the differences. Beyond cannolis, Modern's also has a lot of other pastries that you can choose from. Their selection of flavored cannolis is much more limited compared to Mike's, but you can build your own fresh cannoli based on what you like. We decided to go for the traditional cannoli with a plain ricotta. They also have some seating inside, which is nice when the weather is bad. If you come here, just note that both Mike's and Modern's are cash only. We took our cannolis to the Greenway, which is a nice park area with lots of seating. In the summertime, it can get quite busy here. The Greenway is located right at the entrance to the north end and is a great place to come enjoy snacks or lunch. We found a table with some really nice views to enjoy our cannolis. Alright, let's have a look. Straight off the bat, the biggest noticeable difference is the size of the cannolis. Mike's cannolis are huge compared to Modern's. Another noticeable difference is the filling. Mike's looks a lot fluffier, while Modern's is much smoother. After we took a bite, it became really obvious that the ratios of filling to shell are very different. You can also see that the shell of the Modern cannoli is thicker and denser than Mike's. Overall, I have a slight preference for the cannoli from Mike's Pastry. For the filling, Mike's is slightly more buttery and sweet, but both are quite similar. For the shell, I do prefer Mike's shell as it is lighter and less dense. We also got the Florentine cannoli from Mike's Pastry. This shell is very flavorful and has bits of nuts and caramel, while the filling is ricotta based and airy. This cannoli was quite good, but also very, very sweet, and I found that taking more than a few bites was a bit too much for me. I think that overall, you really can't go wrong with either Modern's or Mike's. This concludes our North End video. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next one.